This is not a story of victory. It is a warning carved into stone and dust beneath a blood-red sky. Before Fort Bowie fell silent, the mountains learned how to echo the sound of dying men. The sun rose hard that morning, pale light cutting through gunsmoke that had not yet begun. In the canyon below, the Apache waited, motionless shadows stitched into the breath of rock. Their chief, Cochise, watched the fort from the ridge, his eyes older than the century itself. Inside the walls, soldiers polished rifles, unaware they were cleaning their own fate. The air smelled of iron, sweat, and the fragile peace that always breaks before dawn. A bugle sounded, sharp, metallic, the sound of arrogance disguised as routine. The wind shifted, carrying the desert's whisper. Today, history will remember who listened. The first shot cracked through the canyon, and silence shattered like glass between cliffs. Birds rose screaming from the cliffs, abandoning nests the way men abandon promises. Bullets ricocheted off stone, each spark a brief sunrise for someone's final second. The Apache charged from the ravine, voices rising with dust, as old as the mountain's bones. The soldiers scrambled to form lines, muskets shaking like hands that already knew regret. Gunfire rolled through the pass, thunder made by men who thought they commanded heaven. An Apache rider fell, his horse collapsing mid-stride. The mountain echoed his final cry. Blood soaked into the dust, red on red, as if the land refused to tell sides apart. A captain shouted orders, his voice cracking beneath the weight of disbelief. Smoke coiled between rocks, turning men into ghosts before they even died. Arrows rained down, singing through the wind, the old weapon against the new arrogance. A soldier dropped his rifle and prayed in a language the desert did not translate. The Apache moved like wind itself, invisible, inevitable, unanswerable. A cannon fired once, shaking the canyon. Its echo came back carrying the screams it made. One boy, barely a man, crawled behind a crate and watched courage lose its shape. A woman inside the fort held her child and whispered that thunder was only the sky's game. The child asked, "Is the sky angry?" And the mother had no lie left to give. The soldiers reloaded, hands blackened, eyes blind with sun and fear. Above them, the Apache circled higher, every stone a sentry, every gust a voice. The mountains carried orders no general could overrule. Cochise raised his hand. The signal was silence, a pause before the final storm. The Apaches descended again, fire gleaming on blades and eyes. The fort's walls trembled beneath the weight of drums no one played. One soldier ran for water. He found dust instead, and dust drank faster than thirst. The commander cursed the canyon for being loyal to its own. A wounded man begged for shade. The sun ignored him as it had ignored everyone before. The air thickened with screams. Even the vultures refused to fly through it. Powder smoke blurred faces, blending enemy and brother into one grey truth. A bugle tried to call retreat. The note broke in half before reaching courage. Arrows pierced through tents, slicing maps that had drawn straight lines through sacred ground. A horse bolted through the gate, its mane on fire, carrying a story no one would believe. The Apache pushed closer, their voices not rage but justice remembered in rhythm. The captain lifted his sword once more, an act of pride mistaken for bravery. A single shot found him. He dropped beside the flag he had promised would never fall. The flag burned slowly, each thread releasing a sigh of surrender the wind carried west. Men fell in waves, and the mountain repeated each death like a chant it could not forget. A medic bound wounds with trembling hands that could not stop the past from bleeding. Cochise rode forward, face unreadable, mercy and fury sharing the same silence. He dismounted, touched the ground, and whispered to the dead in his own tongue. "You are the proof," he said. "The earth will remember longer than their books will lie." The survivors huddled in corners of shadow, praying for night to choose a side. But night brought no peace, only stars reflecting what they saw below. Endless fire. The fort smoldered, its cannons mute, its promise of empire scattered with the ashes. A young soldier wept beside his fallen friend, the tears cutting clean lines through dust. A crow landed on the parapet, watching as if counting how many lessons men would ignore. The moon hung low, refusing to shine on either victory or shame. A wounded Apache crawled toward the river, dragging himself by memory alone. The river ran dry that summer. Even water refused to cleanse what happened here. The mountains listened, their stone faces solemn with the weight of blood too old to judge. By dawn, the gunfire stopped, but echoes lingered, bouncing between cliffs like ghosts. Smoke drifted upward, curling into shapes that looked almost like prayers. The dead lay side by side, soldier and warrior, both equal beneath the same indifferent sky. A boy wandered among them, whispering names until his voice turned to sand. The commander's journal lay open, ink smeared by blood, his last words unfinished. "We underestimated the silence," he had written. The silence answered, "You still do." The Apache gathered their wounded, singing softly to the rhythm of a broken world. For every man who fell, a mountain stood, tall, quiet, unyielding witness. The survivors of the fort left at dusk, eyes hollow, their shadows bending backward. A soldier looked once over his shoulder and saw the canyon watching him leave. The wind picked up the smell of powder and carried it into history's open wound. The vultures came down at night, not hungry, just curious about what men call peace. The river's banks cracked with heat, its reflection clouded by smoke and shame. In Washington, the reports spoke of engagement and necessary victory. But the desert kept the real version, carved deep in dust and silence. Years later, travelers would find bullets half buried, shining faintly like confessions. They'd hear whispers in the wind when dusk touched the canyon walls. "This is where pride died," the wind would say, and memory began to breathe. The fort was rebuilt, but its stones never warmed in sunlight again. Children born nearby grew up hearing that the mountains never stopped mourning. The old people warned, "If you listen too long, you'll hear the dead still answering thunder." The graves were marked by wood that the sun bleached blank, as if mercy erased language. The Apache moved north, carrying stories that bled slower than wounds. Cochise looked back once, eyes fixed on the ridge, knowing the land would finish the tale. He said nothing. Silence was the only tongue the mountains respected. At night, the coyotes sang, keeping time with the wind and the slow turning of stars. Soldiers who returned home dreamed of echoing canyons that never stopped shouting. Their medals rusted in drawers, the gilt stayed polished. The fort's name endured, but its soul remained buried beneath the dry laughter of stone. Travelers still pass through, unaware that every gust of wind carries a name. When storms break there, lightning strikes twice, once for the living, once for memory. The desert breathes differently at Fort Bowie, exhaling sorrow instead of sand. Each dawn, the cliffs glow red, not with sunrise, but with the remembrance of fire. And every night, the mountains echo again, replaying the cry the world refused to hear. For even now, Fort Bowie stands as proof. Victory is only another word for forgetting.